A New York-based tech firm has created a much-needed lab-grown alternative to palm oil that has for years been behind the deforestation of some of the world's most diverse forests and the destruction of the habitat of multiple endangered species. US tech firm C16 Biosciences has come up with Palmless, an alternative to palm oil that is made from yeast cells.
Yeast is really the heart of what you're doing.
Yeast is everything.
Shar Tikku, co-founder of C16 Biosciences, took us inside the lab where they're growing an alternative to palm oil.
Now, let's rewind a little and talk about why palm oil needs to be replaced. Its usage is the widely documented and significant deforestation that it leads to. The makers of Kit Kat chocolate bar bought 453,000 tons in 2020. The tree can grow in low-lying, hot, humid areas near the equator, 85% of which is Indonesia and Malaysia. Now, these are all areas that are home to endangered species like the orangutan, pygmy elephant, and Sumatran rhino. Now, in 2020, 28.7 million hectares of land were in use for palm oil conservation, a 9-fold increase from 3.3 million hectares in 1970. Accounting for over 40% of the world's vegetable oil usage, palm oil continues to dominate the market. The tasteless, colorless, and odorless oil is equally popular with cosmetic makers and food companies. It owes its popularity to the fact that it doesn't change the taste or look of the product, but instead acts as a natural preservative. Okay, so now that we have some context, let's continue. In 2013, Indonesian farmers were clearing up land for palm oil and other crops. Now, they were blamed for the fires and the smoke that drifted across the sea to Singapore. The boss of now C16 Biosciences flew to Singapore, where she was made to wear a mask. The air was so toxic because they were burning down the rainforest in Indonesia. In 2015, large deforestation-related fires swept across Indonesia, and the World Bank estimated the damage to be at $16 billion, while researchers at Columbia and Harvard University estimated that 100,000 people died prematurely because of respiratory diseases linked to the haze. Now, fast forward to 2023, and her business released an alternative to palm oil. The product was recently released commercially to try and reduce the world's reliance on palm oil, says Shara Tikku, CEO of the company. She says that, quote, "No matter how hard you try, every single person touches palm oil every day. It's in everything," unquote. Now, the alternative makes use of a unique strain of yeast, and it's referred to as MP. As per Chris Chuck, professor of bioprocess engineering at the University of Bath, who along with his team is behind the innovation, MP is not fussy and can be fed grass and food waste. Now, to piggyback on how much palm oil is being seeked out, palm oil is used in almost everything. Companies like Nestle, Pepsi, Procter & Gamble, and Unilever use palm oil more than any other company. Now, the tree it's extracted from is native to West Africa, but can now be found all along the equator because of its unique but warm conditions. Now, the equator is also home to the most important and most concentrated rainforest in the world. It's home to some of the most precious land, and it's also the most biodiverse out of any other land. Now, the high demand for oil has exploded over the decades and has been at the expense of these sacred lands. Growers identify the land, slash and burn it, and take what was once a carbon sink to perfectly neat rows. Unilever is one of the world's largest buyers of palm oil, purchasing about 1.5 million tons annually, which is approximately 3% of global production. Now, this is how you and I are adding to this harmful waste. Palm oil is ubiquitous in America's favorite snack foods, as we mentioned earlier. Roughly 50% of all packaged foods in the grocery store contain palm oil, so it's very hard not to buy. Every single room in our households probably contains palm oil. Now, rainforests are hotspots of biodiversity and filter vast amounts of carbon from the atmosphere. However, palm oil plantations are turning rainforests into biological deserts. Then international commodity traders like Cargill or IOI ship huge quantities of palm oil from Southeast Asia to the US and the rest of the world. Let's talk about Indonesia. Now, palm oil is responsible for 3.5% of the country's GDP and has made some of Asia's richest people even richer. But the nature of extraction combined with the amounts means more harm for the poor. Now, in some areas of Indonesia, the government has flat out forbidden locals from entering the forest. Now, residents there have pointed out that when the government does this, they're not taking into account the people who don't own land. So unlike first world countries where houses are being built left and right and somebody is always going to find a house, many people in Indonesia need to build their own houses. Now, people who are just starting out don't own land, so they go to the forest to build homes and lives. If you forbid them from the forest, they have nowhere to go, and this has been one form of displacement in that country. In Malaysia, the palm oil industry has provided employment for smallholders and laborers in Malaysia. But it's also led to land disputes and conflicts with indigenous people who may be displaced from their land. Now, destruction from palm oil plantation is causing orangutan extinction. In one specific incident, an orangutan who was residing in a tree was shot over 60 times to clear the way. Now, surely this amount of times is unnecessary. Locals who found the orangutan and helped rescue the mammal explained how this stuff happens often and it's just for fun. So rather than aiming at the orangutan until it falls down or is deceased, they keep doing it just for fun. Now, the orangutan has in essence become the face of species extinction in Indonesia because of palm oil deforestation specifically. As of now, all 3 species of orangutans are critically endangered. Palm oil executives are also relentless in getting what they want, even if it means violence and taking advantage of small children. Now, ENB's land acquisition manager explains how ENB bribes officials so they can have access to rainforest. Special favors include things like land cruisers, school funding, and many other things that benefit their campaigns or complements their lifestyle. Now, execs have also admitted to employing children as young as 10 years old to collect fruits. Merciless acts can also be seen in the form of police violence conducted by executives themselves. One might ask why executives go as far as to turn to violence. Surely other people will try and stop this. Are they going to violently assault them every single time? Surely this can't be the case given how tiring and time-consuming this is. But the execs have so much money that hiring a team to be on standby whenever they need is no big deal. Now, the sad truth is that even in first world countries, the backup team that violently assaults are the police that are being paid. But even more importantly, the violence itself isn't enough, and executives know this well. But the result of that violence will be well heard and talked about, making other people scared to go and get in their way. And in his words of Eddie Lemur, quote, "And so no more unnecessary disturbances to our workers who are planting," unquote. The high amounts of money offered are seen as so valuable that it's dictating how strong bonds and friendships are between rich executives and both the police and government. And these people who are being paid are so accessible that they're just one phone call or text message away. Now, Lemur has also admitted that sometimes they have those people do it, but they've sometimes partaken in the assaults as well. Talk about a huge power trip. Now, this isn't to say that it happens like this in every single scenario around the world, but it's all very similar, and corrupt people all get their ideas from one another. Now, in the instances and moments where corrupt workers are seen doing or saying something immoral, their tactic every time is deny, deny, deny. No gray areas, just black and white.
They did some messing up too.
Yeah.
Usually went after them in the night, got them, belted them up, locked them up at the station. I was there and through the operations, police and our people went together, in the night, 1, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
These people, and by picking them up, belt them first, and then down, so the story, so the word spread around.
Now, by a single glance at the ingredient list, and you'll realize that what you're holding probably has palm oil in it, and therefore you can put it back on the shelf. In fact, consumers taking notice of this has caused palm oil marketing to become more clever. Companies alleged to opt for, quote, sustainable palm oil instead, unquote. 250 to be exact, in 9 different European countries. Unfortunately, all of them have failed. And maybe this isn't because they lied, but more so due to there not being an alternative option that works. Companies like Greenpeace, Mongbei, and many others have published studies that make the case against sustainable palm oil. Now, through biotechnology, however, there seems to possibly be a better solution. By 2050, the 8 billion human population is expected to grow to 9 billion to 10 billion people, and the demand for palm oil will be threefold if we don't spread awareness. Now, given that there's now an alternative, this means that we can meet these demands without having to wreak havoc and can feed people with a clean method, without having to burn the planet at the same time. Now, synthetic biology and precision fermentation are one really promising way to do this. First, they identify promising microorganisms like yeast, algae, fungi, bacteria, or other growing bacteria. Now, on a month-by-month basis, they are finding the promising benefits these components can have and how useful they can be for the environment, and it's actually very, very exciting. Now, when you think about how back in the day they were viewed as negative, they're now innovative solutions to more and more things that we're finding. Once the host organism is identified, step 2 is to optimize growth conditions. Beer, wine, bread, and cheese go through similar fermentations. Now, precision fermentation takes living organisms like you and me and makes them grow. And they also need energy. Questions revolving this process are in regards to the optimal temperature, preferred sugar sources, and oxygen. Step 3 is refining the oil and derivative products, and step 4 is making the product. Now, when making the products such as makeup or skincare, the science alone is not enough and requires product innovation from different experts. Now, the best part is that while traditional palm oil production takes around 7 years, palmless products reportedly takes less than 7 days from start to finish. Now, Palmless has currently partnered with numerous companies and hoping to partner up with more. But another very significant thing it brings is humane jobs for indigenous communities or those that are located in nature-heavy areas. Now, it simultaneously also takes them away from more labor-intensive jobs. Organizations like Rainforest Action Network are taking action against palm oil deforestation, so you can definitely help by joining this movement. Now, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. In the end, the choice is yours.